What's going on, y'all? TheBrandonBrownson here with another episode of Theory Addict. On this month's TBB Unscripted, I asked you guys if you wanted one super long episode of Theory Addict or two regular length ones. Well, I didn't get any responses, so I decided to go with the longer episode, so we're going to be covering Pixar and Disney in one fell swoop. Before we get started, as always, I have a couple things to say. First of all, I did not come up with any of these theories. I found them all through the magic of Google, and I'll leave links down there in the crotch bar for you. Second, unless otherwise stated, I do not believe any of these theories, and neither should you. The point of this show isn't to educate you per se, but rather to get you thinking about things in a different way, and hopefully have some fun with that. Third, and this should be obvious, but spoiler alerts aplenty. Last of all, let's keep the comment section civil. I'm all for debating the theories and whatnot, but don't be a dick about it. With that said, let's jump right into it. I'm sure that by now, most of you have heard this theory, but it was too cool for me not to mention it. The theory starts with the song For the First Time in Forever from Frozen. During a certain scene in this movie, you might recognize a few faces. Or rather, a few backs of heads. Yup, that's Flynn and Rapunzel from Tangled. Now, being totally realistic, their appearances are a fun little Easter egg, but some theorists believe that this is only the tip of the iceberg. Get it? Iceberg? Because Frozen? Anyways, on to the theory. The theory goes that Anna and Elsa's parents were on their way to Rapunzel and Flynn's wedding when the boat sank. As a result of this, Rapunzel and Flynn made it a point to go to Elsa's coronation ceremony because, you know, if someone's parents die heading to your wedding, you should probably make a point to make it up somehow. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, well, that's cool and all, but what evidence is there for this? Well, I'm happy you asked. First of all, after the king and queen died, the movie flashes to a 3 years later graphic. Tangled was released on November 24th, 2010. Frozen was released November 27th, 2013. That's almost exactly a 3-year difference. Geographically, this theory makes sense as well. Rapunzel is a German fairy tale, so we can assume that the Kingdom of Corona is in Germany. Arendelle, the setting of Frozen, has quite a few nods to Norwegian architecture and culture, and the original fable, the Snow Queen, was set in Scandinavia, so we can also assume that Arendelle is in Norway. In order to get to Norway from Germany, you have to pass through Denmark, and the clothes worn by the humans in The Little Mermaid look very Denmarkian. Speaking of, where does The Little Mermaid fit into all of this anyway? Well, again, I'm happy you asked. You remember the scene in The Little Mermaid where Ariel is exploring the shipwreck? Well, take a look at that picture on the left. Now look at the picture on the right. Notice any similarities? The theory is that Ariel is exploring the King and Queen's ship here. Now, some theorists have tried to tie Tarzan and Beauty and the Beast into this theory as well, but I think I'll leave it as is. This theory all begins with a hat. Take a close look at Andy's cowboy hat here. I'm sure that you can notice that Andy's hat is quite a bit different than Woody's. Why is that? Why doesn't Andy wear a hat that looks more like Woody's? It's pretty obvious that Andy has a close connection with Woody, and in the second Toy Story movie, his mom, who, just for the record, we only ever hear referred to as Miss Davis, mentions that Woody is an old family toy. Woody has no idea that he's an old toy from the 1950s, again proven by Toy Story 2. Most toys in the Toy Story universe know exactly where they came from. It's possible that Woody doesn't know anything about himself because he's been in Andy's family for so long, possibly belonging to Andy's dad. But back to the hat. Take a good look at Jessie's hat. It's the same red hat with white lace that Andy wears. I'm sure that some of you by now have noticed that Andy's hat doesn't have the white lace around it, yes, but let's take a look at Andy's hat one more time. There's a faded mark where the lace should be. Now, why do you think that it is, and what does any of this have to do with who owned Jessie? Let's take a look at Jessie's backstory. Jessie was once owned by a girl named Emily, who grew up with Jessie the same way that Andy grew up with Woody. However, Emily eventually gave Jessie away when she grew older. Jessie ended up in storage for a long time, as confirmed by her having a panic attack in Toy Story 2 when presented with the possibility of going back in storage. Anyways, take a look at what's on the bed in Emily's room. Notice anything familiar? That's right, that hat looks quite a bit like Andy's, only with the lace still on it. This room is also pretty old school, meaning that it was way before Andy's time. Now, when Emily got rid of her old stuff, we never saw the hat. we saw other stuff related to Jessie, but the hat isn't there. As a matter of fact, the box is way too small to hold it. So what if Emily held on to that hat and passed it on to her kid, who would also grow to love a cowboy-themed doll? Still need a little bit more evidence? We see that Emily has light auburn hair as a teenager, and it's pretty short. Compare that to these pictures. The middle picture is the closest to Emily's color, right? Also, we don't know Miss Davis's first name, we don't know Emily's last name, we do know that by this point, Emily could be old enough to be Andy's mom. So it's quite possible that Emily and Andy's mom are the same person, and Jessie used to be owned by Andy's mom. Just some food for thought anyway. This theory could have very well had its own episode, and just for the record, it's one of my favorite theories that I've ever read. This theory suggests that every Pixar movie exists in the same universe and the same timeline. Brave is both the first and the last movie in the timeline. It's about a Scottish kingdom during the Dark Ages, and it's the earliest time period covered by the Pixar films. But it also explains why animals in the Pixar universe occasionally behave like humans. In Brave, Merida discovers that there is magic that can solve all of her problems, but inadvertently turns her mother into a bear. We discover that this magic comes from an old witch who is connected with the mysterious Will-o'-the-Wisps. Not only do we see animals behaving like humans, but we see inanimate objects acting like people in the witch's shop, i.e. the broom. We also learn that the witch disappears every time she passes through doors, making us consider that she might not even exist. Now, we're gonna move on, but we'll come back to Brave in a little bit. Let's just say that, for the time being, the witch is someone who we all know and love from another movie in the timeline. Over time, the animals from Brave that were experimented on have bred, creating a large population of animals slowly getting smarter and smarter. There's two progressions here, the progression of animals and the progression of artificial intelligence. The events of the following movies set up a power struggle between humans, animals, and machines. The stage for an all-out war in regards to animals is set up by Ratatouille, Finding Nemo, and Up in that order. You might notice that A Bug's Life was left out, but we'll get to that in good time. In Ratatouille, we see animals experimenting with their growing personifications in small, controlled experiments. Remy wants to cook, something that only humans do. He crafts a relationship with a small group of humans, and he succeeds. Meanwhile, Chef Skinner, the main villain from the film, disappears. What happens to him? What did he do with his newfound knowledge that animals were able to transcend their instincts, and not only perform tasks that humans can do, but do them better? It's possible that Charles Muntz, the antagonist of Up, learned of this rumor, and that gave him the idea to begin inventing devices that would harness the thoughts of animals, in this case his dogs, through translation collars. The collars indicated to Muntz that animals are smarter and more human-like than we thought. He needed this technology to find the exotic bird that he's obsessed with, and he even comments on how many dogs he's lost since he arrived in South America. But then Doug and the rest of the dogs are set free after Muntz's demise, and we don't know the full implications of that, but we know that the animosity between humans and animals is growing. Now that humans have discovered the potential of animals, they started to cross the line. To develop this new technology, the humans begin an industrial revolution hinted at in Up. In the beginning of Up, Carl is forced to give his house to a corporation because they're expanding the city. Think about that. What corporation is guilty for polluting the Earth and wiping out life in the distant future because of a technological overreach? Well, that would be by and large a corporation that ran just about everything by the time we got to WALL-E. In the history of B&L commercial from the movie, we're told that B&L has even taken over the world's governments. Did you catch that this one corporation achieved global dominance? Oddly enough, Toy Story 3 has a very brief B&L reference. In Finding Nemo, we have an entire population of sea creatures uniting to save a fish that was captured by humans. B&L shows up again in this universe via another news article that talks about beautiful underwater worlds. Lines are being crossed. Humans are beginning to antagonize the increasingly networked and intelligent animals. Think about Dory from Finding Nemo for a second. She stands apart from the other fish because she isn't as intelligent. Her short-term memory loss is likely a result of her not being as advanced as the other sea creatures, which is a reasonable explanation for how rapidly these creatures are evolving. Finding Nemo is the furthest movie in the animal side of things. When it comes to AI, we start off with The Incredibles. Who is the main villain of that movie? You probably thought of Buddy, aka Syndrome, who basically commits genocide on superpowered humans. Or does he? Buddy didn't have any powers, he used technology to get revenge on Mr. Incredible for not taking him seriously. Seems a little excessive that he went as far as genocide to get back at him, eh? Now how does Buddy kill all the supers? He created the Omni Droid, an AI killbot that learns the moves of every superhuman and adapts. When Mr. Incredible is first told about this machine, Mirage mentions that it's an advanced artificial intelligence that's gone rogue. Mr. Incredible points out that it's smart enough to wonder why it had to take orders. The Omni Droid eventually turns on Buddy and starts attacking every human in the city. Why would an AI want to attack at random? Do machines have an inherent hatred for humans? The movie even shows clips of superheroes with capes being done in by inanimate objects, such as plane turbines, on accident. But why would machines want to get rid of humans in the first place? We know that animals don't like humans because they're polluting the earth and experimenting on them, but what's the deal with the machines? This is where Toy Story comes in. Here we see humans using and discarding objects that we see are clearly sentient. Yes, the toys love it, but over the course of the Toy Story sequels, we see toys becoming fed up. But wait, you might be saying, toys and inanimate objects aren't machines, so how do they have some kind of intelligence? Syndrome might have the answer for this one. He tells Mr. Incredible that his lasers are powered by zero-point energy. This is the electromagnetic energy that exists in a vacuum. It's the unseen energy we find in wavelengths, and a reasonable explanation for how toys and objects in the Pixar world draw power. The Toy Story trilogy takes place from the 1990s until 2010, assumed to be about 40 or 50 years since The Incredibles, giving AIs plenty of time to develop BNL. Meanwhile, Pixar is hinting at the dissatisfaction among pockets of toy civilizations. The toys rise up against Sid in the first movie. Jessie resents her owner, Emily, for abandoning her in the second movie. Lotso Hug and Bear outright hates humans by the time of the third movie. Toys are obviously not thrilled with the status quo, providing a reason for why machines and objects alike are ready to take over. So, by the 2000s, superhumans are all but a memory, and mankind is vulnerable. Animals who want to rise up Planet of the Apes style have the ability to take over the planet, but we never see this happen. Also, AI never takes over humans by force. Why do you think that is? It's reasonable to assume that machines did take over, but not how we'd think. The machines use BNL, a faceless corporation, to dominate the world, starting in the 1960s after the Omnidroid fails to defeat the Incredibles. In each of the Toy Story movies, it's made painfully clear that the sentient objects rely on humans for everything from energy to fulfillment. It's hinted at that the toys lose all life when put away in storage unless they're in a museum that will get them seen by humans. So machines decide to control humans by using a corporation that suits their every need, leading to an industrial revolution that then eventually leads to pollution. When the animals rise up against the humans to stop them from polluting the earth, who will save them? The machines. We all know that the machines win the war too, because after this war, there's almost no animals left on the earth. Who's left? Well, these guys. Because the machines tip everything out of balance, Earth becomes an unfit planet for humans and animals alike, so the remaining humans are put on the Axiom as a last-ditch effort to save the human race. On Axiom, the humans have no purpose aside from having their needs met by the machines. The machines have made humans dependent on them for everything because it's how they were treated as toys. It's all they know. Meanwhile, down on Earth, machines are left to populate the world and run the show, explaining human landmarks and traditions still being prominent in Cars. There's no animals or humans left on the Earth because they're all gone, but we do know that the planet still has many human influences left. In Cars 2, the cars all go to Europe and Japan, making it plain that this is all taking place on the Earth as we know it. So what happened to the cars? We learn by now that humans are the source of energy for the machines, that's why they never got rid of them. In WALL-E, they point out that BNL intended to bring the humans back once the planet was clean again, but they failed. The machines on Earth eventually died out, though we don't know how. What we do know is that there is an energy crisis in Cars 2, with oil being the only way society trudges on despite its dangers. We even learned that the Anadol Corporation was using green energy as a catalyst catalyst for a fuel war in order to turn cars away from alternative energy sources. That clean fuel could have been used to wipe out many of the cars very quickly. Which brings us back to WALL-E. Have you ever wondered why WALL-E was the only machine left? We know that the movie begins 800 years after humans have left Earth on Axiom, governed by the autopilot, another AI reference, mind you. Could it be that WALL-E's fascination with human culture and friendship with a cockroach is what allowed him to keep finding fulfillment and the ability to maintain his personality? That's why he was special and liberated the humans. He remembered the times when humans and machines lived in peace, away from all of the pollution caused by both sides. After WALL-E liberates the humans and they rebuild society back on Earth, what happens then? During the end credits of WALL-E, we see the shoe that contains the last of plant life. It grows into a mighty tree, right? A tree that bears a striking resemblance to the central tree in A Bug's Life. That's right, the reason why no humans show up in A Bug's Life is because there aren't a whole lot of them left. We know because of the cockroach that some of the insects survived, meaning they would have rebounded a bit quicker. Though the movie had to be far enough in the timeline for the birds to have returned as well, though they are noticeably less intelligent than the bugs. There's something strikingly different about A Bug's Life when compared to all other Pixar portrayals of animals, which is why theorists believe that this takes place in the future. Unlike Ratatouille, Up, and Finding Nemo, the bugs have many human activities similar to what the rats in Ratatouille were merely experimenting with. The bugs have cities, bars, advertisements, their own machines. They know what a Bloody Mary is, they even have a traveling circus. This all assumes that the movie is in a different time period. The other factor that sets A Bug's Life apart from other Pixar movies is that, with the exception of Cars and Cars 2, it's the only one that doesn't revolve around or even include humans. There's another Pixar movie that was supposed to be released in 2012, but was ixnayed and replaced with Brave. The movie was called Newt, and theories think that it might have fit into the same timeline post-WALL-E. The movie's plot is summed up as thus. What happens when the last remaining male and female blue-footed newts on the planet are forced together by science to save the species? But they can't stand each other. A movie about an endangered species rebuilding itself could have fit well into the theory, but since it was never released, this is all just speculation. So what happens next? Humans, machines, and animals grow in harmony to the point where a new superspecies is born. Monsters. The monster civilization is actually a super futuristic Earth. Now, you might be asking, where did the monsters come from? It's possible that the monsters are simply the personified animals mutated after the diseased Earth was irradiated for 800 years. Whatever the reason, the monsters seem to all look like horribly mutated animals, only larger and civilized. They have cities and even colleges, as we see in Monsters University. In Monsters, Inc., they have an energy crisis because they are in a futuristic Earth without humans. Humans are the source of energy, but thanks to the machines, again, the monsters find a way to use doors to travel to the human world. Only, it's not a different dimension. No, the monsters are going back in time. They're harvesting energy to keep from going extinct by going back to when humans were the most prominent, the peak of civilization, if you will. Though a lot of time has passed, animosity towards humans never really went away for the animals/monsters. Monsters must have relied on anti-human instincts to believe that just touching a human would corrupt their world, like it did in the past. So they scare humans to gather their energy until they realize that laughter, aka green energy, is more efficient because it's positive in nature. We even see a connection between A Bug's Life and Monsters, Inc. via the trailer we see in both movies. As you can see, the trailer looks the exact same, except the one in Bug's Life is noticeably older and more decrepit, while the one in Monsters, Inc. has humans and looks newer. That said, Monsters, Inc. is thus far the most futuristic Pixar movie. By the end of the film, humans, animals, and machines have finally found a way to understand one another and live in harmony. And then there's Boo. What do you think happened to her? She saw everything take place in future Earth where Kitty was able to talk. She became obsessed with finding out what happened to her friend Sully and why the animals in her time weren't quite as smart as the ones she's seen from the future. She remembers that doors are the key to how she found Sully in the first place and becomes a witch. Yup. Boo is the witch from Brave. She figures out how to time travel in order to find Sully and goes back to what she believes is the source, the will-o'-the-wisps. They are what started everything, and as a witch, she cultivates this magic in an attempt to find Sully by creating doors going back and forth through time. Now, how do we know that Boo and the witch are the same person? In Brave, you can briefly see a drawing in the workshop. Look familiar? Hell, we even see a Pizza Planet truck carved as a wooden toy in her shop, which makes no sense unless she's seen one before. You remember Merida opening doors and the witch constantly disappearing? It's because the doors are made the same way for Monsters, Inc. They transport across time, and that's why Merida couldn't find the witch later in the movie. But hold on, you might be asking, how did Boo travel in time in the first place, and why is she so obsessed with wood? Boo must have discovered that wood has been the source of energy all along, not just humans. The machines and Monsters Inc. use doors because they're made of wood, and found a way to use that energy to travel in time. Obsessed with finding Sully, Boo traveled across the Pixar universe using doors made from wood. So, Boo went back to the Dark Ages probably because she could use plenty of wood there for her experiments, or to study the will-o'-the-wisps. We know that her first encounter with Mordu ended with her turning him into a monstrous bear, but he regresses. She probably wanted to turn him into a bear because Sully resembles a bear, and she's still trying to figure out where Sully comes from. Does Boo ever find Sully? Well, I'd like to hope so. He surely reunited with her at least once as a child at the end of Monsters, Inc. at least. But her love for Sully is, after all, the crux of the entire Pixar universe. The love of different people, of different ages, and even different species, finding ways to live on Earth without destroying it because of a lust for energy. Well folks, that about does it for this episode. Now before you go, make sure to check out some of the links in the description. Pick up my latest EP, Gamers Unite, for free. Go ahead and pick up some The Brandon Brownson merchandise from Spreadshirt. Like the Chameleon Productions fan group on Facebook. Check out all the other channels down there, and remember to like/follow me on all the social media sites. Now please, remember to keep the comment section civil. Don't be a dick. And keep in mind that these theories are supposed to be fun, not informative. That about does it for this episode, though. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. The Brandon Brownson, signing out.